have come and gone, while the mill pumps life into this town. Ship after ship, gorged with paper tried and true. But one thing stays unchanged decades through, like a call from the past for all who knew. 'Cause at 7:45 and 8 o'clock you can hear the whistle scream, ringing clear for miles around, you swear it's always been. When the whistle roared at the hour of 4 and the day's sweat and toil was done, each home would pray that the mill would stay, and we'd always hear the whistle blow. Hear the whistle blow. Hear the whistle blow. Hear it blow.
Welcome to another of our Mill Basket programs, and I'm very quickly going to introduce our guest today because we've got a lot of photographs, we've got a lot of information to get on. He is Dr. Noel Murphy, and I was saying before we started, I mean, doctor, former mayor, historian, everybody.
Let's get on with the story.
Okay. We're gonna talk about today the connection of the paper company and medical services in this surrounding area, because we've had other guests on the show that have talked about the fact that the paper company used to look after the houses that were built in the town site area, and they were pretty good and benevolent in the workers and the situations around. So we're going to get right into it. You want to get started, but first I want everybody to know a little bit about you. You were born where?
Well, I'm originally from St. John's, and the family's been here in Newfoundland for 200 years. I was the only one to be born outside Newfoundland, and that was a geographical accident due to a war, World War I, when my father was serving overseas and I was born overseas. But I've never been able to live it down.
But you've been around here for quite a while. Now, I seem to recall your beginnings in the Bombay area, is that right?
Yes, when I came back from the war, that's right, I went out to Bombay. And I was asked to go out there and take over the hospital, and stayed there from 45 to 54. Then came into Corner Brook and set up practice here. Mm-hmm. And then, but the story, my involvement with Bowaters started before that. But I want to go back 100 years or more. I'd like to go back to 1876, when the first doctor settled here in Corner Brook. No, wait now, you're a bit early for that.
Okay.
Yeah, the first doctor was Dr. Miller. And before that, the only doctors that came to this area were on naval vessels, and a British Navy ship would come in, and people would literally line up to see the surgeon on board.
So in this whole area, there was nobody to look after?
That's right, nobody in the area. So Dr. Miller came in. He was the first doctor. Now we get to this.
Which is a notice dated 1887. So I'll just hold that up for the camera. Now you tell me what this is all about.
Well, this is an invitation to the people to come to a public meeting to discuss a letter that they had received from a Dr. Carey, who had offered to come and live here and practice here. So that takes us back to 1887. And from then on, there were a variety of people. Now we get up to 1903.
And this brings us to?
Now we come into the area of the Fishers. And this is Dr. Franklin Fisher, who was the son of Christopher Fisher. He was the fourth child, and he went away and studied medicine, came back, and in 1903 he went into Bombay and settled there for a year. Then he moved into the Corner Brook area. And he has a fascinating history, a story all of its own. He worked in this area until he had a stroke later in life, in the 30s, when he retired. But he had the area from St. George's, the whole Bay of Islands, Deer Lake, and Bombay. And twice a year, he used to tour the coast as far as Battle Harbor, twice a year, and visit every community.
At the turn of the century?
At the turn of the century, starting in 1904, 1905, something like that. Now, there were doctors in Bombay in those early days. They usually stayed about a year or 2 years, and some of them are fascinating to read back over the names. One was Dr. Campbell, who later became a minister of the Crown. He was the man, I think, who named the St. Barbe area the Gold Coast, because the people were paid in gold coins by the British Navy, which was patrolling the coast. The British Navy, by the way, had its base in Bombay. The French had their base. They were patrolling the coast as well. They had their base in Bay St. George. But the British paid in gold coin, and there are all sorts of wonderful stories about that.
I'm fascinated already. I mean, I could listen. You can go on
we
for hours, but we've got to zero in here.
That's right. We've got to get on with the medical side of things.
Now, let's. You were telling me an interesting story. Is this the gentleman that was walking to Deer Lake?
Yes, there are lots of stories about Franklin Fisher, Dr. Frank Fisher. He was a marvelous man, and as I say, part of his district. He was the only doctor who included Deer Lake, and after the railway came in 1490,
you're thinking Cabot.
In 1897, when it went through, he used to walk the tracks to Deer Lake. To get to Deer Lake, there was no road in those days, and he had a lantern, a hurricane lantern, and he was known. This was a known thing, you know. He was recognized for that. So there are lots of stories about this.
Yeah.
But what a man to go to Deer Lake, walking over the tracks, 30 miles.
I think that you could call that a house call.
Yeah, well, in those days it was probably a week's call. Incredible.
Let's jump ahead now, let's say
Right.
20, 25 years.
Well, by the time we got up to the 20s, and they were talking about building the mill here, and by the way, a lot of people still don't know that the original plan was to build the mill in Deer Lake because they didn't know how to take electricity 30 miles. They couldn't do it. And so what they were going to do was build the mill in Deer Lake where the power was going to be developed. And while they were considering it, the people in London set to work and said, all right, let's find a way of doing it. And they devised a method to take electricity from Deer Lake to Corner Brook, because that's really where they wanted the mill to be, on the water.
So they could get the paper out.
That's right.
And
And so then they set to work, and one of the things that they wanted to do was to build a hospital. And on the screen now you can see the hospital.
And this is dated around 1924, going into 25.
Well, it was opened in 1925, and it was opened on August the 25th by Lady Alderdice, the wife of the then governor of Newfoundland. And the picture shows the hospital being built, and you can see the houses on East Valley Road being built.
Now there's another one. This one has a bit of snow on the ground.
Yes.
The second photograph we have is maybe a little earlier, before the winter set in, but I think you can see a little more of the construction.
But again, now on the left of the picture there, of course, is West Street, which doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist, yeah.
And Park Street, and it's interesting looking back at it.
Well, speaking of looking back, we would be looking from around where the Glenmalin is now.
That's right.
Towards
now,
this.
that hospital was built by the company, and the condition was that there had to be 6 beds available to the company at all times. I think it had 30 or 35 beds. Now, rather interesting, but before that was built, they had to have something, and so they had Mr. Arthur Hammond. Now, this is a man with a story all of his own. Art Hammond was a man who served in the First World War with the St. John Ambulance Brigade, which was led across to Europe by Dr. Clooney McPherson. And for his work in that ambulance unit, he was awarded the Military Medal, which is a pretty rare thing for a medical attendant.
Where was he? Was he from around here?
No, he was from the East Coast.
Okay.
At the end of the war, he came back and he went up to the Hawke's Bay area, and he worked up there. The early flyers had a base up there. And then when they started building the hospital, he moved down here, and he was in charge of their first aid room down here. And he was also in charge of the little hospital that they built here on Humber Road. It had, I think, 6 beds.
Stop. I've never heard in my life of a little hospital on Humber Road.
I'll surprise you all the time. There was a little hospital there, and if you had to be in bed more than 24 hours, you were put into a special car, railway car, which was painted white with a red cross on it, and you were shipped off to Deer Lake, where there was a 12-bed
That's right. Now, I've heard of that one, because on one of our shows, one of the gentlemen told us that there was a 12-bed.
The doctor in Deer Lake was Dr. Carr. He had a contract to operate the hospital up there. So that was around about 1923-24, while they were building the Deer Lake electricity plant and the main dam and so on. And Art Hammond stayed with the company, and when the hospital, the general hospital, opened, he was the technician with the X-ray department, And I never seen such a thing in all my life. First time I went in there, he said, "Watch out, watch your head." And all over the top of me, there were wires running. And if you put your hand up, you'd probably be electrocuted, you know. But that's how he took all the x-rays. He went in, I think, for 2 or 3 hours every day and did that. And he ran the mill first aid room. There were nurses down in the mill, too. Nurse Prim and Nurse MacDonald.
Now, I've heard of Nurse Prim. I've heard that name before.
Were the two, I think, best known. And interesting thing, that top picture there.
Yes, this has got a connection to a previous show.
That's right. Now, that picture there shows the first doctor at the hospital, Dr. Cochrane, and sitting next to Dr. Cochrane is Mary Keegan, who became Mrs. Manuel, the mother of Cousin John Manuel.
And that's the connection to a previous show.
He referred to me as Cousin Noel, so I'll give it back to him, Cousin John. That was his wife, and there were 2 more nurses there, and there they are, the original group. And
that was his connection, like he said, only for his father coming to work with the paper mill and his mother being at the hospital.
The interesting thing is that her father was Dr. Keegan in St. John's, and as far as I know, he was responsible for getting Dr. Cochrane from Montreal to come down here. And here, now, I asked her a little while ago, oh, she's dead now, but I asked her some years ago to tell me something about it, and she wrote me this lovely letter.
And this is what you made a photocopy of.
That's right.
And gave to John Manuel to use.
He was holding it up the other day.
But this is the original manuscript.
That's right.
So we have here the original.
So that was fascinating.
Now, I'm going to put this down because very quickly I want to go to these 2 photos. This one is the...
That's the opening of the hospital on August the 24th, 1925. And there you see the crowd gathered outside the old General Hospital.
You know, that was a beautiful old building.
Yes, it had 30 or 35 beds, but they always had 50 patients. And if you were having a baby, that would be something, of course, the whole community would turn out if you were having a baby, but anybody having a baby would be...
I was born in this building.
Would be delivered and put back in a taxi then with the baby and sent home.
So there was no stay-in?
They just didn't have room. They had people in the corridor and up the stairs and all over the place. And it was really remarkable.
And people say they're overcrowded now?
It's interesting.
Now that's the outside view. This is a little closer here. This is the actual ceremony.
This is a picture of Lady Alderdice, who is the governor's wife, the then governor's wife, officially opening the building. And the next day, the governor himself opened the mill. So
it all happened pretty much the same time.
Well, they got 2 for 1. You know?
Yeah, they had them here, so why not open it all, right? That's right. Now these are fascinating photos. Yeah. I mean, I'll just get rid of this one because we'll just get this one on as well here because this is another shot of the old and the new, we could say, for that
Now
period.
we've got to come up to 1944. And it was quite obvious then that the little hospital, the General Hospital, couldn't cope with the demands being made on it. And so they set about planning how they could either extend it. And interestingly enough, I've got a picture of what was originally intended as the extension.
Okay, so I'll get rid of this. I like that. I've never seen this before. No, this is another first.
I don't know how many people have seen it. Right in the middle there, you see is the old hospital, and see on each side of it, they had put an extension.
We can get zoom back there a little.
Yeah, come the other way now.
Get the whole picture here.
Yeah.
Attaboy.
That's right. It's fascinating. And they set about a campaign to raise money. Now, there you are.
I'll do it.
They set about a campaign, and eventually what they decided was that they would build a new hospital. The people would raise money in West Newfoundland, and it would be matched by the company. Bowaters would match dollar for dollar, and the government would pick up the rest. And they thought it would be about $1 million. It turned out in the end that it was 1.5 million. I think I'm right in saying the people raised about 350,000, and the company matched it.
So whatever happened to that particular plan?
Nothing. It just died. Lots of plans die, you know, on the drafting table. And so that was opened in 1951, and there is the actual Western Memorial Hospital little brochure that was put out.
Okay, we'll just do this and then we'll take a quick break.
That was the opening in 1951. And Premier Smallwood was then in office, and he came out and opened it, and that is the actual, it's kind of...
The program.
Yes, it's kind of worn out.
January the 5th, 1951.
That's right.
You know, it's great when people keep all these things.
Let me just tell you, At the same time that they were planning this, Dr. Dove, who was the medical officer in charge of Bowaters, and he was the chief of services of the hospital, said to me, I came into Cornerbrook to pick up some supplies or something, and he said to me, what do you think? We're going to build a 100-bed hospital, the Western Memorial Hospital. And I said, you're crazy. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, you need 200 beds. I've never been into the old hospital, but there were 50 patients or more crammed into it, and you could easily put 100 in tomorrow. Right. You're going to need 200 beds. Oh, he said, you've been too long out in the sticks. You know, you've had it. Well, do you know, I came into Cornerbrook in 54. The hospital was opened in 51. I came in 54, and within 3 years, the medical staff were sitting down with the hospital board discussing how we could expand the hospital, and we needed 250 beds. And at that point, the government, I'll stop there.
Hold that thought. Our producer wants us to take a quick break. Hold that thought. We'll be right back and we'll continue. We have more photographs, more information. Our guest, Dr. Noel Murphy, will be back in just a moment. Welcome back to our Mill Basket program. Our guest today, Dr. Noel Murphy. I was going to say Mayor Murphy, but in many capacities, historian, I think, major today. We left there. We were talking about getting up in time towards the end of an era when the hospital was getting too small and it had to be expanded.
Well, we got to the end of the 50s.
Yeah.
And it was obvious that the Western Memorial Hospital was too small now. Mm-hmm. And by the way, what did you say your name was? And then the government at that point said, look, we've just about licked tuberculosis. Mm-hmm. And so what we're going to do now, we will turn over the sanatorium to you. And so they moved the few patients with tuberculosis onto one floor, and we were given the rest. And so we put pediatrics and obstetrics and I think medicine over there, and kept the Western Memorial for surgery.
Now, where's the company in all this, the paper company? Were they involved?
No, they were out of it.
They were out of this.
See, they were out of it then, lending moral support and so on. And after we got the sanatorium, it was difficult because if you were in the operating room, let's say I was in the operating room assisting somebody or giving an anesthetic, and suddenly a call came in, Mrs. Jones is just about to deliver. She's over at the other hospital. And you had to run downstairs, jump in the car, and rush over to the other hospital to do a delivery. So it was kind of difficult. But within very few years, the government decided, and we decided, it just wasn't working well enough. And so then they decided that they would build a new section.
Right, so this is an artist's rendition here of what the new hospital would be. And I must say, it's pretty much... it pretty much came true.
If you look at that picture, you'll see in the background is the sanatorium. That building at the background is the sanatorium, and the new section is in front. And then on the right-hand side is the nurses' residence and Monaghan Hall. And that was the concept, and that was what was built.
Yeah, that's right. It looks pretty much exactly.
And even in that picture, you can see the helipad, the helicopter pad right there in front, which they're using all the time now.
Now that's our modern picture. I got to get these two in because I hadn't seen these before. Let's go back a few years and have a look at this one.
That goes back, I would say, now that's the White House. So we know we're in the 40s now.
That's right.
Because that was built around about 42, 43, 44, something like that.
And I always look at the surroundings. Look at the trees. They haven't grown very much, and they're just newly planted.
That's
the background up where West Valley Road is, no houses that's all built up now. So this goes back quite a ways.
You can see the first few houses are built on West Valley Road, and it's just coming into the picture now is St. Henry's, the school and the church there. And the hospital, of course, is right down below us here.
Actually, we're on top of the hill looking down.
Just see the roof of the hospital.
Just down there on the bottom, right.
Yeah.
Okay, now that's that one. I want to look at this one because this is a beauty. I really like this one.
Now that goes back to the 20s, and it's really fascinating.
There's the old hospital down the corner.
On the left-hand side,
Yeah.
that's right, and that's the Majestic Theatre facing us.
Now that was built
Yes,
as
it was
a
built
theater.
as a theatre, that's right. And then you see East Valley Road there, that's the first road running up, and Central Street, the next one.
Yeah.
And further over is Reed Street. And I'm pretty sure that the building at the bottom was the old Columbus Club, but further up at the top there is, I believe that was the Salvation Army
I see that large building.
there. Yes, that's right. Fascinating. That's in the late 20s.
That's a beautiful.
Or early 30s.
I like the organization of the thing. Everything, they were just straight roads. Everything
yes, it was,
everything was where
That
it
was
was.
the town site, and nobody could live in it if you didn't work in the mill and were given a house by the company. So,
Now we're rushing along. I got to get all this
Yes,
in.
yes,
Where did you come into the picture?
well,
with
I
the
came into
paper?
the picture. I came back at the end of the war. I was asked to go out to Bombay and take over the hospital, which I did. And in the 40s, 47, something like that, a plane came in, and out of it climbed Mr. Lewin, Monty Lewin, and Dr. Neville Whitehurst, whom they had brought out from England. He was Sir Eric Bowater's personal physician, and he'd come out here to have a look around, and they came to see me to ask. They knew I'd been in the Air Force. They wanted me to come and join the company, learn to fly, and be the flying doctor for the company. And I said, thanks very much, I've done my flying, I'm going to stay on the ground, I'm quite happy here. So that was that. 3 or 4 years later, I got a call very early in the morning, and this little boat had come into Bombay, and it turned out it was the Porpoise. Now, many people will remember the Porpoise. The company owned this. She was about a 40-foot cabin cruiser, and they were heading, they had Monty Lewin and 2 or 3 other people on board, and they were heading for Hawke's Bay.
This was a pleasure craft?
During the night.
Okay.
Well, that's right. They were going to Hawke's Bay on business, and during the night, one of them got up from the cabin and went out into the cockpit, and when he got outside, he collapsed. And the fellow at the wheel saw this happen and said, what's going on? And he realized, he went out to help, and he realized they were being poisoned with carbon monoxide. And he stopped the engine, and they all came out, and they sat outside. They were sick as anything, and they turned back. They must have been off Sally's Cove, something like that. Got back into Bombay, and typical case of carbon monoxide poisoning, all of them, but they were all right. And they wanted to go on, and I said, no way. You're going back to Corner Brook. And Monty was furious with me, and I just said, that's it, you're not allowed to go on. Not in that boat, you're not. And they went back. So, that, you know, I met in that way,
This
too.
is your beginnings with the paper company.
Well, then when I moved into Corner Brook, of course, I was invited to participate in the first aid. We did clinics. All the doctors had the opportunity. Some of them were too busy. I was just starting my practice and was glad to have the opportunity. And when it was my turn, I'd go down and do clinics. And we did 2 a day, and the nurse, whoever the nurse was, Nurse Prim or Mac or whatever, would help us.
But where did the building across the street come in with the doctors, the clinic?
Well, that was
used to-
already there. I think it was the Woods Department. And when the doctors finished, now the doctors finished, here's a list.
Okay. No, we can't go through.
No, I don't want to go through it, but it starts with Dr. Cochrane and goes right down through, and pretty well the last one is Dr. Archie Pickles, who came out from England in 1955 as the official company doctor. But he after 2 years, he married the president's daughter, and he left. They moved out to British Columbia. Archie Pickles, lots of the old-timers will remember him.
So after 55?
After that, then the doctors set up a clinic in that building outside the gate. And by the way, it's interesting to note that in the 50s, the late 50s, there were 2,300 people working inside the mill gates. So it was pretty busy for a doctor to go in there and have to do a clinic. You might see 5, you might see 20 patients.
That's right. Well, I mean, 2,300 people would keep a couple of doctors going pretty busy.
Yeah. So
Plus the fact if there was a scattered
and
accident
then there was
or
an
something.
accident, yes, there were always the odd accident. And so we were occupied.
Now, your connection, show me the papers you had there with your sketches. I want to show a side of you that nobody has ever seen before. I mean, I'm amazed at this. I thought I know you pretty well, but
Nobody knows me.
I
don't even know myself.
I doubt if there are many people around here that...
Well, when I first came here, there was no anesthetist on staff. So we used to help one another.
Now, this is in the hospital on West Street, the first one.
No, not the old hospital. This was Western Memorial Hospital.
On the hill, okay.
There was no anesthetist, and we used to help one another by giving anesthetics. Some could give better than others. Fortunately, I had experience in giving anesthetics, so I was one of the ones who gave anesthetics when asked to. If you did surgery, you found an anesthetist for yourself. If somebody was doing surgery, they might ask you to help them with the surgery or give an anesthetic. And I found that just sitting there at the head of the table, you know, very often the anesthetic was running along smoothly, everything was going on, and I started doodling. And one of the first things I did was that. Now, you'll see this is on the back of a lab requisition.
Here's the lab requisition. I'll just get this. This is a lab requisition. I got to hold it this way because the actual.
I just picked it up.
Then we turn it over, and you were doing your little
I looked at that
sketching.
and I thought, golly, that looks like a foot.
and I was going to say the rest, as they say, is history. But you didn't stop there. I want to show this.
I tried my hand at.
So what's this piece of
equipment? That's the X-ray
equipment?
machine. That's the portable X-ray machine that had been pushed into the operating room. And I was sitting there sketching away the thing. And then I tried my hand at somebody, and again, you'll see that this was done on a lab requisition.
Yeah, right over it. You didn't fool around this time at all. You didn't even turn it over, right?
And that's a doctor working on somebody's arm. The arm is out on a table like that.
Right. Now I want some more because we're going to identify a couple of people here, right? Aren't we? Now this. I mean, look at. You could have had a career as a great artist.
I doubt it. I doubt it.
This is pretty good.
That's Dr. Bugden, Dr. Ray Bugden, giving an anesthetic.
He's sitting down there.
And you see the surgeon at work on the other side there, and an assistant with him and a nurse in the background.
Okay.
And there's another one.
Now this one I'm interested because you can name.
Well, that's Dr. Monahan there.
The gentleman in the middle is
Yes,
Dr. Monahan,
Dr.
T.T. Monahan.
And Dr. Murray, Dr. Bernard Murray on the right, and I don't know who the nurse was.
Okay, so there's Dr. Murray.
But there they are, hard at work. And
Dr. Murphy, the artist. I never knew you had that much talent.
Nor did I. Wait now, what are we...
Can I say that
All
affectionately?
right, let me tell you now, we've got to the point that the government built now the new section, the new Western Memorial Regional Hospital, and it came in at about $15 million, which was better, shook them up a little bit, you know. But today, it's fully occupied. The old Western Memorial is now an extended care area. And
with the new renovations just recently completed.
And it's also got the veterans wing, veterans ward in there. The old general hospital's gone. It's a parking lot now.
You know, it's a pity that old hospital is not still, that building was classy.
When I came into Corner Brook in 1954, I think I was number 12 of the doctors here. And today there are something over 60 doctors here in the Corner Brook area.
We have to go.
Well, I knew there had to be an end somewhere.
Sir?
What'd you say your name was? You need the publicity.
An absolute pleasure to have you with us. The most interesting story, the connection of medical services and the paper company, and medical services as they've come up through the years.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. We'll be back next week with another Mill Basket.
Each home would pray that the mill would stay, and we'd always hear the whistle blow. Hear the whistle blow. Hear the whistle blow. Hear it blow.